here's our agenda. So by way of preamble, and you sort of know this because you sort of feel it in your heart, there's an air of uncertainty in our markets, right? Some of it relates to the macro uncertainties. We've got 2 wars going on. We've got some mixed signals with respect to the economy, and I think there's some worry about what's to come in terms of a recession or a soft landing. There is some, let's face it, significant changes taking place in the industry with signal loss and the implications of what that means to the future. And then finally, AI. Now this is a positive change, but it's a disruptive change nonetheless, and it has the potential to completely rewrite the rule book in terms of creating software and how we go about our business, as we will be discussing significantly today. In fact, it feels like it's a triumph of feelings over facts. The absolute facts about the economy, whether it's employment or GDP growth or tamed inflation or stock market performance, there is a lot of parameters that are actually quite positive. And yet, there is this sort of feeling like, uh-oh, not sure where things are going. And so it doesn't feel as good as the facts would suggest. And we would suggest that we may be seeing, more of a dichotomy in the technology ecosystem between the tech giants and the other participants. Last year, we talked about big turmoil in big tech with major business model changes, rising competition, and increased government scrutiny. Well, let's see, how did that pan out? Well, yep, 2022 was a lot of turmoil for big tech, but go one more year, and 2023 has actually shown incredible strength for the big tech companies, and not just commerce tech, it's also the marketing clouds, the software companies. All of these, most of these major tech giants have performed extremely well. So what changed? What was the difference? I'm going to suggest 3 things: the year of efficiency, AI advantage, and privacy and antitrust. So the shift to the year of efficiency was a bonanza for these big tech companies. They have large payrolls, so a simple RIF could materially change their economics, and you can see how their EBITDA margins have all improved. By the way, Meta, all they had to do was stop spending tens of billions of dollars on the metaverse, and they automatically added that to the bottom line. So that one was maybe a bit of an easy kick for Meta. And you saw it in the last quarter, right? Q3 earnings, their advertising driven by their AI solutions beat all expectations, and the stocks soared. And one of the things that we're going to be discussing is, for the tech giants, is scale a comparative advantage in the AI race? The answer is, of course. But they're pursuing this opportunity across all fronts. They're building, they're partnering, they're investing, and they're buying companies in order to position themselves for what could very well be, and it certainly feels like, one of the most consequential trends in technology in certainly a generation. Also, privacy and antitrust. Let's remember that privacy and antitrust are like the 2 blades of a sword, right? They work sort of contra to the other. And for privacy, the signal loss, has an implication for the broader ecosystem that doesn't necessarily impact the tech giants. In part, they're making the rules. They have a huge swath of first-party data. Antitrust has held them back from doing deals, and that's, of course, hurts the ecosystem in terms of exit opportunities. But for them, and in particular, companies like Google are really asking the government, which one do you want? Do you want us to work on privacy, or do you want to work on antitrust? Can't have both. So it's an interesting dynamic that's playing out. For the folks in the rest of the ecosystem, look, this abrupt change towards the focus on profitability has been tough for them, right? Again, tech giants were already there with high EBITDA margins, so for them it was kind of easy. They didn't have to move that much. Martech, if we look at the index of public martech companies, they've actually done a great job in that year change by improving their EBITDA, but it comes at a cost to those companies because they're younger, and of course, they're just on that cusp of profitability. And the the harsher financing ecosystem has meant that we're seeing an accelerating number of failures on the startup side, probably not unexpected in turbulent markets like this. And look, the uncertain exit environment that we reference, only 3 scaled tech IPOs in 2023. They all happened in Q3, and we're at a significant low in terms of M&A activity. But case for optimism. You always got to be optimistic. Again, going back to facts versus feelings, the facts are all moving in the right direction, up and to the right in terms of ad spend growth, e-commerce sales, software. So we will see. There is uncertainty. There's hesitancy due to lack of confidence as to where the economy's going, but the fundamentals are still very positive.
So let's dig in a little bit on this market side of things. Take a look at valuations and where these exits are happening. So look, we all know over the last 18 months or so, valuations in the public markets have really dropped down very significantly. But it's critical to take a longer term perspective on this, right? If you took this back 10 years, you'll see that across the ad tech and martech ecosystem, we're really just reverted back to the mean, which is on average about 4 to 5 times net revenue. What's important here too is that, as you can see, this drop hasn't continued, right? It's really started to flatline and has found some stability at those valuations over the last 6 to 7 quarters. It's good to look back at where we were and how we got here. So we like using this Bessemer Cloud Index as a broader swath of software companies. And if you went back to 2021, there was a ton of focus on growth. Really, growth was by far the highest impact on valuation in the public markets for software companies. And what we found is that you could actually break it into cohorts. So you got the 0 to 25% growth, 25 to 50% growth, and those growing over 50%. And there were massive jumps in valuation at each one of those hurdles. So 8 times in the low end, 16 at the sort of middle level, and almost 30 times at the high end. Well, things have changed considerably since then. First off, you just have a very different growth picture. So while there were over 10 companies growing over 50% at that time in 21 or expecting to, there are no companies in the software ecosystem today that are expected to grow over 50%. And those that are in the lower cohorts, now the valuations have been cut effectively in half, right? 4.5 times for the 0 to 25% and 7.2 times for those at the 25 to 50%. So just a very different landscape that we're working in. As Terry noted, the companies in the space have had to react to that. And so while in 21, the focus from a metric perspective was all on growth, they were growing over 30% on average in LUMA M, and their EBITDA margins really weren't the prioritization. That's really shifted. And so as growth has come down, these companies have done a great job of shifting towards optimizing towards EBITDA margins and have more than doubled their margins in the last 2 years. So what does it ultimately mean? Well, for Meta, we may have just had the year of efficiency, but in the software ecosystem, we're really shifting to this new era around efficient growth. And both Jason Lemkin at SaaStr has come out talking about this, and Iconic Growth put out a great report talking about what these metrics can be. And we've seen this come to fruition where the companies that are able to get out are the ones that are really aligning to this. So, but the 3 tech IPOs this year, Arm, Instacart, and Klaviyo, all 3 of them were profitable before they got public. And in Instacart and Klaviyo's case, they both did that only in the last year. So in Iconic's piece, they had a great set of, this great report that broke down what are the key metrics when you're looking at efficient growth. And they came down to these 5 sort of key capabilities: ARR growth, net dollar retention, your rule of 40, net magic number, and your ARR per FTE. And when Klaviyo went public the other month, we decided to look at how they stacked up. And it's actually incredible. So as the one pure martech company that's gone public in 2021, or since 2021, they sort of hit it across the board on all these metrics. So above median ARR growth, nearly 50%, net dollar retention at about 120%, rule of 40 double the median at 60%, net magic number at 1 times, and ARR per FTE also double what the median median across the cohort was. What this means for Klaviyo, so again, best of the breed here is an 11 times ARR multiple. No, certainly a very strong ARR multiple, but very, very different from the ecosystem where we were 2 years ago, where the median was about 16 times. So that's on the public markets and where people are thinking about from a valuation perspective. But as it stands, M&A is still the primary source of exits in the ad tech and martech ecosystem. While there have been only 3 IPOs, there have been 20 scaled exits in this sector throughout this year. And certainly, we had a big uptick in scaled deals in 20 and 21, but we really are back to the mean where there's a handful of deals in this sector every year and every quarter. But this does beg the question, especially in marketing technology, who are the buyers in this universe? So back in 2019 at this event, we talked about this expanding buyer universe of marketing clouds and private equity being the usual suspects who would continue to be buying, digital giants coming into the space, and even some brands starting to lean in. But today, the picture is pretty different, right? Digital giants, as Terry noted, are really on the sideline due to antitrust concerns. Brands have always been pretty sporadic. And private equity, certainly very active still, but are managing this ongoing changes in the interest rate environment. But then there's also the marketing clouds, who've actually very much slowed down their M&A activity, at least in number of deals over the last few years. This is not even just martech. This is all of their M&A activity. In general, they've pushed away from doing the few $100 million deals, instead focused on some of the larger, more transformational transactions. So again, who does that leave to be the buyers in this space? Well, we think there's actually a very large growing cohort of could be and potentially should be buyers in this. And that's really the martech ecosystem in and of itself. Today, there's 24 public martech companies and over 45 private martech companies that are valued over $1 billion. Collectively, this is about 75 companies, almost $250 billion in value, and about $25 billion in cash or capital that's been raised in the last 3 years. Historically, these two cohorts have really not focused on M&A. They have always over-indexed to a build versus buy situation. But we think that's changing in this new era. So for any M&A market to take place, you just have to start with this pre-existing condition of scaled mature demand and high quality supply. And I think that is something we have always had in spade in this ecosystem. But when there's been a ton of access to capital and focus on growth, people have always leaned more towards build versus leaning into the buying opportunities. But with this new era of efficient growth, we think that's starting to change for some of these platforms. They've got slowed organic growth. Profitability is becoming a critical focus. And the capital dynamics are changing how their supply are thinking about the potential of M&A versus going it alone. And that's going to open up massive M&A strategy opportunities, right? They can use M&A to get growth, expand capabilities much faster. But importantly, just M&A 101, right? Acquire more scale, bring operational efficiencies to these platforms, which allows them to do so on a profitable basis that they may not be able to do on their own or may not be able to optimize as well on their own. And because they're now being judged on their bottom line of their P&L and efficiency, it's very hard to invest the capital they may have on hand into their P&L and hiring more people to build. Instead, they can invest off their balance sheet. And so we see, I think, very easy for a banker to be up here and say that this is the next trend and these should be the next the buyers. But we're actually starting to see this trend to start to take form here. Just in the last few months, you saw Sprout Social, Content Square, and HubSpot all do scaled M&A transactions. And I think for each 3 of these, the biggest transaction they've done to date. So you now have this growing cohort of companies that have been around for 10 plus years reacting to this new era of efficient growth and thinking about starting to turn that M&A inorganic growth muscle on.
Fill in the blank, by the way. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a... Yeah, okay, right, you got it. So turning to martech trends, we're going to cover off 4 of them here. Let's dive right in on data and identity. So look, as you all well know, the privacy landscape is an evolving one where we saw with the start in Europe and with GDPR in 2018, the issue of the consumer's privacy and what signals and what consents need to be offered in order for them to be sort of tracked, if you will, have led to, and we've seen legislation on this country as well, starting with states, and we still haven't gotten any kind of a national legislation, but perhaps more impactful has been the responses of the tech platforms, notably Google and Apple, with respect to their deprecation of signals. And here's the point: this is not a static environment. It is continuously changing, and we are likely to see, as you can see with the ramp up, more emphasis on protecting the privacy of consumers, and so whether you're talking about enforcement, new laws like the Delete Act that was passed here in California in October, and significant implications for how, at least on the advertising side of martech, how some of that signal gets taken advantage of. And we've even seen hints of IP address is likely next. We should all assume that this is a train that keeps moving in that direction. And really the paradigm, it represents a paradigm shift from the third-party sort of data-centric world to a first-party and data collaboration-like world. So if you think about it, in our prior existence, we had incredible scale, ubiquity, and ease of data collection, but we lacked fidelity, control, and privacy, whereas in this new paradigm, we have the exact opposite. We have the fidelity, the control, and the privacy, but we lack scale, ubiquity, and ease. So there needs to be a fix for that. And the implications of this paradigm shift, we've really seen two responses, grouping them in the market. We've seen efforts around data collaboration, so taking that sort of first-party data in a clean room and making use of that in the marketplace. And you've seen a huge proliferation of data collaboration and clean room companies. And then alternative methods, cookieless or non-audience-based company solutions in the marketplace that try to address achieving your marketing goals, albeit without the audience tracking. And the reality for both of these efforts to date is slow to scale. So here's what's happening. Everyone knows cookie deprecation in Chrome is coming in 2024. Maybe. And so what when I say slow to scale today, everyone's testing, everyone's making sure that they're or trying to test these alternative methods, whether it's contextual or non-identity or consented identity, but they haven't stepped on the gas yet because they don't have to. And if we learned anything from GDPR 5 years ago, it's that everyone will wait till the 11th hour to act. And so to date, we have testing, people are firing it up, but it's not full-scale implementation. So if you were to ask, when is this change going to happen? Well, you tell me when cookie deprecation starts, going from the 99% to zero in the second half of 2024, and that's likely when we're going to see the market act. And the other implication of this is, attribution and measurement will need to move from a deterministic model to a probabilistic model, and this is an area where, because you have to scale that first-party data, where AI may actually help materially. And we should see, likely, with this convergence, the sort of the ad tech worlds and the martech worlds start to converge as a result.
Cool. So moving on to the commerce ecosystem. Look, there's a million things to talk about in commerce. We're going to actually have a panel in a little bit talking about some other trends. Just in general, I mean, e-commerce continues to be this massive growth opportunity. While we didn't, continue the massive expansion post COVID, we did continue at that bump. So we got a step function at that time and have continued to grow. And E-commerce is only expanding further as consumers are leaning into more and more channels. So mobile commerce, social commerce, conversational commerce with AI, live shopping. So this is an ecosystem that is really driving a ton of growth and innovation. One of the biggest beneficiaries of this is commerce media. And last year we ran into a lot on why the sort of the baseline of how you built a commerce media, what were the core functionalities. Today I want to talk a little bit about defining commerce media and why it is so hard to define. But first, I think it's important just to sort of note what are the driving forces of this. As I see it, there's really four key interconnected forces that are driving commerce media. First, the consumer. So, as we noted, over $1 trillion of spend on e-commerce in the US. That's over 15% of retail commerce, and that continues to grow year over year. On the retailer side, there's a variety of things, but it really boils down to commerce media helping improve their customer experience. They're able to leverage their existing assets around personalization and improve conversion rates on their sites. And most importantly, it has way higher margins. So it's a very attractive business line for them to move into. For marketers, this all comes down to closed loop attribution. They want to be able to tie their advertising spend to actual results, and what better way to do that than to actually tie it to retail outcomes. And finally, there's the ecosystem. As Terry noted, data deprecation is coming, and so this creates a massive opportunity both for companies to look for these new channels, but also to see how they can extend commerce media further. But as I noted, commerce media is this $100 billion opportunity, yet it's been very hard for people to define. If you ask 5 people, you often get 5 different responses as to what commerce media is. And heading to a retail media event the other day, I had this realization that the challenge is that commerce media is both a channel and a layer. And this is not the first time we've actually seen this. So who remembers the year of mobile, that 5-year span between 2010 and 2015 when everyone was calling the next year will be the year of mobile? Well, one of the things we had realized at that time was this same notion that mobile was not just a channel. So everyone was thinking about mobile as this next pillar of advertising. You had search, social display, video, and mobile was going to be the next aspect to it. But as it turned out, for most marketers, mobile wasn't a channel. It was just a new layer on their existing channels. So you didn't plan mobile search and desktop search. You planned search across mobile and desktop. Well, commerce media has a very similar attribute to it. Retail media, advertising on retailer sites, is very much a new channel, right? It's new inventory, new parties that you're working with. But commerce media is a much broader capacity, which includes leveraging commerce data and ultimately using media signals to tie media purchases to actual outcomes. And this isn't actually new, right? There's been existing layers across all these channels that you could consider commerce media, whether it's affiliate ecosystem, influencer, just cost per acquisition, purchases, shoppable media formats. All of these could be considered commerce media. What we're seeing now that's starting to change things alongside data deprecation is actually taking that data and not just using a measurement at the back end, but moving it up to the top, where you've got companies leveraging their commerce data to create audiences and really do a full funnel purchase where they can buy branded advertising at the top of the funnel, but be able to measure it at the bottom of the funnel. And so this sort of evolution of how people think about commerce media is one of the reasons it's becoming such a big opportunity and getting so much attention. So changing gears here, I want to talk about some stuff we've seen in just the evolution around the marketing technology stack, around both the omnichannel experience and this notion of how the stack is being set up. So on omnichannel experience, we used to have this notion of marketing automation and touching consumers where they are has been around for a while. But what we noticed is that for years, you had companies that started in one ecosystem. So you had the email companies, you had the mobile engagement platforms come about. But increasingly, these have all converged around the notion of cross-channel or omni-channel marketing. And in fact, if you go and look at all of their different taglines, companies that came from very different places, e-commerce, SMS, email, mobile messaging, are now starting to sound the same, right? Omni-channel marketing automation, insights-led customer engagement platform, intelligent marketing automation platform. So we're trying to think through what's happened here. And What's really at the core of this is as these companies move to unifying around omni-channel, they're shifting from thinking about the brand at the center and managing different channels, even if they're orchestrated together, to thinking about customers at the center. And this is really what's led to the growth of CDPs, but now sort of an evolution of how these companies are interacting with CDPs or with the data ecosystem together. So this is a chart we've often used to talk about what the CDP landscape looks like. CDP sort of being in the middle, managing the identity, user profile, customer segments, and decisioning. And then they export to all the different channels. Well, what we've noticed is that a lot of the companies focused on the omni-channel customer experience have started to expand across the top layer here on different touch points, but also down into the stack to own more of the decisioning themselves. So you got Twilio, who acquired SendGrid, moving from SMS into the email side of things, as well as Segment, capturing the full CDP stack. You have a company like Bloomreach that started as really search optimization for e-commerce sites, expanding across an omni-channel, adding mobile, SMS, email, site optimization, paid media, and then acquiring Expandia to have their own CDP and decisioning orchestration layer. And even Klaviyo, so started on the email side, has moved into mobile, SMS push in a big way, and just last year built their own CDP, driving further into that stack. So ultimately, these companies are starting to bump further and further into each other and trying to hold a whole bunch of components of this ecosystem. And while they're doing that, the customer experience is only getting more fragmented, more challenging. So on the customer side of things, we're seeing more and more focus from customers leaning into buying and interacting in these new ways. So social commerce is going to be over 100 million US consumers are going to buy on social this year. I think I read a stat recently at eMarketer that said 1 in 10 people in the US is actually going to buy on TikTok this year, and they only launched TikTok Shop just this summer. Then you've got business messaging. So with the rise of AI and consumers sort of interacting in messaging apps more and interacting with the chat features, this is becoming a big area of focus where consumers are finding brands and talking to their brands. 80% of people have interacted with a chatbot. 64% say they actually prefer to message with a company than picking up a phone and calling. And that WhatsApp currently has 200 million monthly active users that are business users on their platform. In fact, Meta just recently in their latest earnings announcement noted that business messaging is going to be the next major pillar of their business. What's interesting to see here is that one of the things that's happening is a lot of that omni-channel experience and omni-channel management has happened in own channels. So it's been email, SMS, push, website, things that brands really fully control and kind of control the ecosystem. As consumers are starting to shop and buy on social channels, message more, and interact with brands in these other platforms, there's really needing to start to incorporate the third-party ecosystem into that omni-channel marketing automation platform. And the last thing we want to talk about on the martech stack is just this evolution of the martech stack. And it's a little bit of a push and pull of what I just talked about of people sort of organizing around different parts of the stack, but also this constant push and pull we've seen around platforms versus best in breed. This has been a topic in the martech ecosystem for years. The marketing clouds came out initially thinking they were going to build whole platforms, people would buy it holistically. Increasingly, we've seen that best in breed has won over. But what best in breed was initially was really buying the best platform in any specific vertical, right, and cobbling together. But that cobbling together has been a massive challenge. What we're shifting to is this notion of best in breed shifting to composability, which is not just the fact that it's best in breed, but more about customization for what's best for your business. So it's not this is the best content management system, but this is the best content management system for integrating into the platforms that I am using and for the stack that works for my ecosystem. Ultimately, what composability means in our minds is just this notion of interoperability at the core. So most martech companies today, one of the second things you'll see on their site is their partner ecosystem, because they're all coming in with these pre-built native integrations. What we've noticed is that there are some channels that are really having a bigger impact on this, and data warehouse is a prime example of it. So This notion of reverse ETL and the composable CDP is all built on the fact that rather than having your data in multiple places and moving around, keep it in the data warehouse. We'll come and interact with that data there and bring you a CDP from that touch point. But Snowflake's not doing this just in CDPs and reverse ETLs. They're really building a full ecosystem around this concept of native integrations, being the central data warehouses and saying, come build on top of us, come develop on top of us, and we'll make it very easy for you to you find your customers and take out all the friction from the system. Ultimately, what this is doing is sort of creating what we've seen in aggregation theory on the consumer side of things and moving that into the marketing technology stack. So Scott Brinker, who is at HubSpot and writes the Chief Martech blog, had this great blog the other week about consolidation versus aggregation in the martech stack. And it's based on the premise that of Ben Thompson at Stratechery talks about aggregation, where you have a couple central points that have aggregated massive amount of where consumers go. He often is talking about the consumer side of things, so Facebook, Google search, where there's a flywheel effect that the more consumers you get, the more valuable it is, and therefore they will ultimately extract all the value or a lot of the value and all the platform opportunities. Well, this is starting to happen in the martech stack, and different functions, different core infrastructures are popping up where they're building massive ecosystems around them. What they're able to do is be a core component for certain types of customers, and then with the platform ecosystem are allowing others to find their customers there, and ultimately sort of creating themselves as an anchor tenant into the marketing technology stack. So what's interesting is this isn't just happening in the data side of things. So if you take data and omni-channel marketing experience, Snowflake is a major contender there. But if you look at the Shopify ecosystem, it's exactly what Shopify has been doing from their perspective. And actually, the Trade Desk most recently has been looking to make this same sort of move, launching Kokai and saying, instead of talking and building partnerships to come and allow your data to be used on Trade Desk, we're just going to make it open, come and build on top of us, and therefore trying to centralize spend to them, but you can use all these different platforms or channels that are going to improve that spend on their platform.
All right, and then finally, the topic of the day, it seems, artificial intelligence, can't escape it. Technology loves the shiny new object, and let me tell you something, this one is about as shiny, did I say hyped? Sorry, as shiny as they get. In fact, just in this last week, there was enough announcements in AI, and some pretty big ones about, automation of, creating your own GPTs at the OpenAI developer conference. They announced a store. A lot of the sort of infrastructure and foundational platform dynamics that Connor just spoke of appear to be forming and taking place in AI. And of course, this is not new, right? It's not like AI is a November 30, 2022 phenomena. In 2016, in prior DMSs, we talked about the rise of AI, some of the momentum in 2017, 2018, we talked about use cases across the marketing and how it'll underpin it. And then 2019 talked about the sort of applications, both left brain and right brain, for AI in the marketing ecosystem. So this has certainly been on a roll for a while, but let's face it, everything went haywire about a year ago. And with the launch of ChatGPT and the whole focus on generative AI, and you've seeing it in the, just the capital raising that has manifested in the last year, in particular, these large companies raising over $24 billion in 2023. And you have to say, even though it's November, you got to say year to date, because I have no doubt that we're going to have lots more in the next month and a half. The valuations have been sort of eye-boggling, and in sharp contrast, right, to a lot of the rest of the market. In Q3 alone, 15 unicorns were birthed in AI. So tremendous amount of obviously attention, tremendous amount of hype, tremendous amount of financing at very high valuations. In fact, this sort of magnificent seven, which have performed phenomenally in 2023 so far, have helped create a S&P return of plus 14%. Without them, by the way, the actual stock market is down. So the impact here is pretty monumental. And look, I think it is important. Look, we're big believers that AI is a game changer, so we think there's a there, but there is a lot of hype, right? I mean, whether it's Mark Hurd, projecting this 6 years ago, or just look at the .ai registrations, of companies which have exploded. Everyone is trying to position themselves as an AI company. Now, one of the things we talked about years ago was AI is going to be a tool. It's almost going to be like Intel Inside, right? You're going to use AI to do whatever you were doing before. So if you're doing media optimization, then you're using AI to do media optimization. It doesn't mean you're an AI company. It means you leverage AI to do what you were doing previously. And a great example of this is in August, we sold a company called Sybids to Double Verify, which described themselves as an AI firm, but in the marketplace, they did media buying optimization, and they just leveraged AI. How do you know that? How do you know this isn't just a 2023, paint it over and call yourself an AI company? Well, turns out the founder has got an advanced degree in AI, and they were describing themselves as an AI company, 5 years ago. So maybe we'll see a lot of visits to the Wayback Machine to make sure that these were in fact companies that were consistent on messaging. A lot of concerns about AI across the board, and the good news about this is I think unlike other technology trends where we kind of went headlong into them without sort of contemplating the consequences, I think there's a lot of attention on potential downsides and things to get right this time as we develop this powerful new technology. So I think the consciousness is there, which will be a big benefit. One of the ones we're really looking at is this notion of, is there an unfair advantage? Is scale going to make the large players that we referenced earlier, whether they're building their own or acquiring or investing, give them an unfair advantage vis-a-vis the rest of the ecosystem? And will it end up as a winner-take-most kind of scenario? Or like what we saw on Monday and OpenAI's announcement of a platform for sort of everybody to utilize, will this in fact be democratized so that you basically put software creation, instant software creation in the hands of every participant in the ecosystem? That's a trend we're going to be watching very strongly. And look, it's great that the government is focused on it. The executive order announced last week, I think, has got a lot of parameters, which I think allude to the consciousness of trying to do it right this time. I worry a little bit about overreach and the fact that we simply, how do you know how to regulate if you don't know what the product and services are going to be? And of course, one of the other elements of coming out too early with legislation is this notion of regulatory capture. And will that then basically revert the benefits largely to the incumbents? So, but in this world, right, AI and ad tech and martech were kind of made for each other. If you think about it, right, AI is powerful software that can but what it needs, its fuel, is massive data sets. Well, the largest and most robust data sets in the world happen to be in edtech and martech. So there ought be applications, in fact there already are, as we've seen in the marketplace, across data, media, workflow, and creative in terms of how this technology is going to be used to leverage business models in edtech and martech. But, AI can go too far. I mean, some of the results don't make any sense. But you know what? Just like machines can produce content that doesn't make any sense, turns out so can humans. That was quite the sketch of Sam Bankman-Fried. I did not get that, but I want him to be my portrait artist from now on. All right, so that's our state of digital, and now we're going to kick off with the rest of the day. Thank you.